Hello everyone and welcome back to Bitwig Studio and Music Production. This is lesson 5.84, and in this lesson I'm going to talk about how you can create your own multi-sample instrument inside of Bitwig Studio. So right now the one thing that I think is really hurting us with the sampler is that if, for example, I go in here and I take something like a drum beat and I convert it to a multi-sample, there's no way I can come in here and add any more layers. I can't add any more zones, okay? This is the only one. And I can't drag and drop additional samples in here because if I do, at least in my case, my entire system just totally shuts down. I have to physically turn off my computer. So that's really, really frustrating, and that's not something that I like about this, but there are, of course, a few easy workarounds to deal with that. So if I pull in this drum loop here, we solo this out, and let's say we want a version of this playing forwards and playing backwards. What I could do, and let me just set this to 115, go in here real quick. Stretch it back. Like so. What I could do is I could duplicate this and then I could turn this one into reverse. And now if I take these two and I consolidate them, I have one clip. So that kind of solves our problem, assuming that I have at least two slices that I'm going to be making. So I can right click this, slice to multi-sample, and I'm going to change this to bar so I just get two slices. I'll click OK, and I've created this sampler instrument. And so we can hear that like so, and if I play a C sharp one, we'll get the reverse. But let's say that I want half of my keyboard to be key tracking and playing the sample straight, the other half of the keyboard to be key tracking and playing it in reverse. How am I going to set that up? Well, I'll go into the edit mode here, and I'm going to set this to go to the bottom of the keyboard. So this is the one that's going to be playing straight. And the high, I want to be something like C3, but I'm a little nervous I'm going to lose my other sample, so let's set this one up first. And we'll set this root to be C3, that's fine. And we'll have the high be at the top of the keyboard, and this go up to C3 or so. This one we can now send all the way up there to B2. And now what I can do is I could say, all right, I want this root to be at C1, which is in this range, so that if I play a C1, if I can find it here, we will be playing the sample back straight in its original. Now I can turn key tracking on. And right now we're not looping, so we'll fix that in a second. And I'm going to turn off the velocity sensitivity. But if I play up and down the keyboard with key tracking enabled, we'll hear it either speed up or slow down. Or like so. But I can turn on the loop here, and now I just have to pull these braces in, like so. All right, lovely. I'm gonna do the same thing to the other side. I'll set the root here to be C4, and I'll turn key tracking on. I'll turn loop on, pull this guy in like so, and now if I go up a couple octaves, we could play the two of them together. Unfortunately, I only have 25 keys next to me, but that's the way that you would go about creating a multi-sample instrument in this particular fashion. The frustrating thing is that if you want to do this, you have to put everything into one clip at the start. So let's say you had like 20 drum loops you want to use. You'd have to stack all 20 of those going across in one clip, drop it in, and then slice accordingly and make your adjustments inside of this wave editor here. All right, we could also then save this if we wanted now, and we'll call it something like Funky Drummer, and categorize it into drums. Click OK. Okay, so our other way of maybe trying to make a multi-sampled instrument is going to be a bit more time-consuming and advanced, but let's say you have a keyboard in your house or a piano and you want to actually resample that and put it into the sampler with different amounts of velocity control, meaning that you recorded it when you played a note very softly, you recorded it when you played a note somewhere in the middle, and you recorded it again when you played that same note and really pounded it, and this is like what that would sound like. So there's our very soft variation. There's our slightly louder variation, and that's our loudest variation, like so. Now I played it a couple octaves above as well. Okay, and so now what we have to do is like before, even if you had like 128 samples, you have to combine them all together here and then consolidate like so. Unfortunately, that seems to have taken something away. I'm not sure why. Sometimes there are just errors in here that you cannot explain. And if it does that again, I'm going to have to bounce it. Yeah. I don't know, guys. And maybe now it will let me consolidate it? Yeah. All right, so there are just some errors still in this program that they've yet to work out. Now what I'm going to do is I know I need 9 samples so I can find all those places. I could go in here and just drop a bunch of onsets, but I think what I'll do instead, and it'll just be a little bit more work for me, is I'll go in, add in the sampler, slice to multi-sample, and this is going to make me 19 slices. That's a lot, but I'll go ahead and use that. That's fine. And so now I can go in here to this new one that we've created, get rid of that. And I'm just going to need 9. So let's see. 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Actually, I just need 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 for all my samples. So everything else I can delete and get rid of. And now what I want to do first of all is I want to just isolate these samples, make sure that I have the right thing going. Have to set this up into record mode. And now, there we go. Let's turn velocity sensitivity off. So that's good for the first one. The second one, though, we need to go and isolate the second note. I'm going to have to zoom way in. Okay, I'm happy with that, and I'll have to now go in and grab the third one. Okay, now I have my 6 different samples, and the one thing you haven't seen yet is that we can create different velocity ranges as well as creating different note ranges. So these are my soft ones, so I'm going to pull these down to something like between 0 and 25, meaning that if I hit my C1 really hard, we're not going to see anything or hear anything. We have to hit it very softly. At least hopefully. There's a lot of problems with this thing. Next, I'm going to take my other range here. And I don't want these to overlap. What did I set this to? 25. So I want this to be 26 to, we'll say, 80. So if I play in that range, that's what I'll get. And then with the last guy, we'll go 81 right to the top. And now what I want to do is I want to have all of these guys playing on one key. So that way, depending on the velocity I hit with, that's the sort of sample that ends up getting triggered. So this is rooting at C3. So we'll set this one to go down to C1 and set this one to go to C1. I also know that when I played this in, I played an E note, so I'm going to have to make sure that I change this to be an E1. But first, let's go ahead and do the same thing over here. Okay, perfect. And now I can set these root positions if I set these both into key track. Okay, so I'm going to try to highlight all three. We'll see if it lets me do all three at the same time. It may not. I'm going to key track this, and I'm pretty sure I played an E1 with this as my root. So I'm going to pull this to E1. And I'll set the low to be E1, or E0 even, we could go. And for right now, I'll just have to play that up there. And as you can see, it's going to make me do each of these ones manually. So this is a real tedious process. All right, so I've gone ahead and moved all of those out. It just takes some time. It's a bit of a process. And now we'll just go ahead and connect these two together somewhere in the middle. I'm not too worried about it at this point, but when you guys are actually doing this, definitely be more precise and consider where these are going to line up as compared to what I'm doing. But now we should have like a resampled keyboard. Go up. Like so. And obviously there's a lot of fine tuning and nuancing that has to be done. That one I screwed up and didn't key track, so we'll key track that in now. And in real actual multi-sampled instruments, we'll take a look at one of them quickly just so we can have an idea. But in the case of something like this inside of Bitwig, they have not added any velocity sensitivity, but they've added in many, many samples. So that as we play up and down the keyboard, each one of these is only responsible for a few different notes. So really that's the process for how you're going to make your own multi-sample instrument. It can be really time consuming, really tedious, kind of a pain. But if you have like a classic piano or instrument at home and you want to be able to play it inside of your digital audio workstation, that's the way you're going to have to go about doing it. But also this is useful for like if you're just going around the house and hitting things and you want to have a nice little organic percussion library, you could put them all together into one long audio clip like so, split them out the offsets, drag it, convert it into a sampler, go in there, get all your regions proper, and you only will have to do it once because once you're done, you can save that multi-sample and recall it whenever you want. So I know this wasn't the most practical of all examples, but I do hope that's helpful. That's the way you're going to go about doing it. And you will hear from me again in the next lesson. Take care.